Anyone can count the seeds in an apple, but only God can count the apples in the seed. The story of Good Shepherd includes many people, but really it's the Lord's story. In June of 1978, Good Shepherd started meeting in Loveland High School. Then in June of 79, on 13 acres, ground was broken, time was given, and the building began to take shape. From the beginning, Good Shepherd Church was formed, in large part by our heart for missions. Despite some of the challenges of those early years, and of course there were challenges, even in the midst of leadership changes, the Lord was clear that Good Shepherd was His church and it was here to stay.
As the Lord would have it, an initial 2-year commitment turned into 41. Over the course of those many years, families came, ministries were started, and generations took root. Staying at Good Shepherd, although at times not easy, was a calling that could not go unanswered. We needed to sow a field on which the next generation could build a church that would be here to stay. A mark of Good Shepherd has always been a deep grounding in God's Word. Every week, as people have come in and out of these doors, hearts have been tended to and seeds have been scattered throughout the world. On any given day, marriages are blessed, losses are mourned, and new life is celebrated. From the Christmas programs to serving our city, mission trips abroad to faithful friends, our church has experienced it all. This plan and purpose, although executed by imperfect people, has been grounded in God's Word and His vision for Good Shepherd. It's been worth investing in. It's clear that the Lord's story for Good Shepherd through the years has been one that is here to stay.
Yeah, pretty awesome, huh? If you are wondering, man, I wonder if they'll do a new part of that video next week, you'll just have to come and see next week, you know what I mean? Hey, my name's Austin, and I see some faces maybe I don't know, some guests with us today, and I just want to say welcome. You caught us at an odd time. Let me, if I could just be honest, we are in the middle of a 3-week series called Here to Stay, and what this is all pointing to is next week, our church family is going to come prepared, come prayed up, ready to submit an offering that we are going to use exclusively for the updating and for some construction in the building. There's several projects the trustees have kind of picked out over time, and that it has all been outlined last week. And so if you want to get up to date, you missed last weekend's sermon, you can go back and watch that one online. There's also a landing page on our website that you can go to that has just a quick little recap video, and you can see all the projects out in the hall. But what I want to do today is I really want to take some time to unpack why we as Christians give. Why we give. Why would we give to the church? What are tithes and offerings, and how are those used? How should those be used? Really, what I want to do today is I want to convince you that really this 3 weeks is not about you contributing, or any person contributing a certain amount of a certain amount of money to a building project. Really what this is about is seeing to it that God would show us the priority of how we are to order finances in our heart according to His Word. Amen? And so I just want to say, though, on the front of this, that there's a lot of you that don't consider this church home. Maybe you're just checking us out for the first time. And I just want to say, we don't expect you to contribute anything in this next week. I pray that if you are searching for a church, that is something that you should take seriously. And I'm praying that you will take the time to find a church, find a pastor that you can get involved in. If it's not this one, that is okay. It's also okay if it is this one. If you come here and you find here and you hang here and you feel like you belong here, you want to stick, man, get in and just dive all the way in is my request. don't be half-hearted at different places, but find someone that you can get behind and serve and pour after vision and go for it, whatever that pastor is feeling led to do and whatever that body is feeling led to go for it. But it's an awkward thing. I mean, even last week I addressed it, but there's all these people I don't even know that are in the room, and I'm like, hey, we need $1.5 million, and it's not necessarily from you. What I want to say is if you're a guest, we don't need your money. Our church, if you want to know kind of how this is built, and we'll talk about more of this in a little bit, we are not, people have asked before, like, hey, how does this work? Y'all get like a grant from the government or something like that? How do you have this building and pay all these people? And no is the answer to that question for sure. But, is there just like one billionaire that kind of hangs out here, just like Billionaire Bill, who's got a trust fund somewhere and he just kind of sets you guys up? It's just going. And the answer to that is no also. I mean, really, what you're looking at here is a family of believers, and there's about 150, to our best estimate, really, unique giving units or unique giving families in this church. And so all that budget numbers and stuff that we talked about last week, that is all given through about 150 to 200 families. We look at tithing or just giving reports. It's important that you know, we never see any names attached to those reports, so I have no idea who ever gives what. I don't ever want to know who gives what, because I never want to give more attention to Billionaire Bill than Millionaire Millie or whoever, this person is. It's just like, oh, just $1 million, like whatever. No, we don't want to be impartial in any way. And so I have no idea who gives what. I don't want to know who gives what. But we do look at what's given, and we look at households and how much is given. We try and estimate how much of our people are tithing, and it's about 300 people probably. If you estimate the 150 is like married couples, and maybe there's some singles, but maybe there's some families as well. And that's a really healthy number. It's a really healthy number for a church, given that some giving statistics more recently would indicate that Americans in general give about 2.8% of their income to the local church. 2.8. So that's obviously well short of a tithe. We'll talk about what a tithe is if you're not familiar with that word, but it's well short. That number is actually down from about 3.3% during the Great Depression. And that's greatly depressing, isn't it? Like, wow, we have maybe more than ever, and we're giving probably less than we have in a long time. And so really, why we give? I want to unpack this message for you today. Why is it that I would participate in something like this? Why is it that I would contribute and give to a local church? We're going to open up to 1 Chronicles chapter 29. If you want to grab your Bible, open it up there. If you don't have a Bible with you, it'll be on the screen. But as you're turning there, I want to tell you a story that I think fits with kind of the heart of this message. Our kids at school, this was last winter, they did like a little pop-up shop. They sell all sorts of little fun, just cheap little toys, sticky hands, and what are the little guys with the like sticky hands and sticky feet, and you throw them at a window and they just kind of flip down? I just thought those things were awesome. I always love those things. They're just great. And the kids one year are like, hey, Mom and Dad, this last year, they were like, hey, we'd really like some money so that we could buy presents for you guys. They set it up around Christmas time. Like, we just really love to buy some presents for you. I'd love to do some Christmas shopping for Harrison. And I was like, this is great. Don't save the trip to Target, you know what I mean? Because there's no way that's cheaper than $10 ever. That's always more expensive than $10. So I'm like, here you go, $5 each. They go to the store, come home that night, they go to school, right? And I don't remember exactly how the conversation came up, but we're putting our kids to bed at night. And Harrison had expressly communicated to Harper that he really wanted this like cheetah toy that he saw. He saw some Wild Kratts episode and was just like obsessed with cheetahs. There's this little cheetah toy. And comes out as we're kind of doing bedtime. Harper didn't buy him the cheetah thing. And in fact, she actually only spent the money on herself. She didn't even buy us anything. And then as we're like exploring Harrison, who's devastated, right? Harrison is just heartbroken in this moment because he didn't get anything. Come to find out, he didn't buy us anything either. He didn't spend any money on his sister. He spent it all on himself. It was just like, I am going to use this in a sermon someday. So I wrote it down and like dated the note. And today's the day. Today's the day. Because I think really what that story captures is a lot of our heart posture towards money. I mean, how many of you have prayed the prayer like, God, if you would just let me win the lotto, I would be so generous with that money, right? And it's like, probably not. Maybe you would be generous, but would you be like sacrificially generous? Are you sacrificially generous now? We have won the lottery. I mean, we live in one of the most prosperous nations to have ever existed. And are we sacrificially generous now? Is that how we use our money? Well, this is going over well already. It's just amazing. I can speak for myself, but I know that like, man, it's easy to kind of take resources that are given to you. And I know in my head that everything I have belongs to the Lord. Not just a tithe, but every single penny in my bank account belongs to him. I not only know that, but I know that, man, everything that I'm able to do, all the work, everything that I'm able to produce, and everything that I do that generates an income is all because of Jesus. every single moment is a moment of grace that I live in. And so all of it belongs to him. All of it's because of him. And yet, like, I don't just sit here over every single paycheck and just go, okay, God, here's my tithe. That part's automatic. But like, what would you have Katie and I do with this money? What would you do? What do you want us to do? I'm just not that intentionally prayerful. And my guess is, if we're honest, not a lot of us are. Not a lot of us are. And so, 1 Chronicles chapter 29, I think it really captures the heart posture of what we're hoping for in this series. It's a unique book, the book of 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Really, it would have been one book, but the scroll was just so dang huge. They cut it down into 1st and 2nd Chronicles. But it really just is recapping a lot of the stories that you've read already in Samuel and in 1st and 2nd Kings. And it's just going back over it. But it captures this in 1 Chronicles chapter 29. I want to pull a couple just things out of this text. And then I have just a few points, and just a few points. We won't go 10 minutes over like we did last week. My bad. And David, the king, said to all the assembly, Solomon, my son, whom alone God has chosen, is young and inexperienced, and the work is great. For the palace will not be for man, but for the Lord God. So David, at this moment, he's at the end of his reign as king. And he knows that he's already passing his kingdom on to his son Solomon. If you know the backstory of King David had actually received plans from God to build this just magnificently glorious temple. And David is told by God that he's not going to be the person to build the temple because he was a man of war. There was so much blood on David's hands. He'd engaged in so much battle that it wasn't going to be his to build, but he was going to gather all the supplies. He was going to have the blueprint, and he was going to pass that off to his son Solomon to actually build. And so he's sitting here saying, it's Solomon's turn. Solomon, even though he's young and experienced, he's got a lot of work ahead of him. It's his turn to go. So I have provided for the house, David speaking, of my God, so far as I was able, the gold for the things of gold, the silver for the things of silver, and the bronze for the things of bronze, the iron for the things of iron, and wood for the things of wood, besides great quantities of onyx and stones for setting. Antimony, anyone know what that is? I Googled it this morning, so I know what it is. It's an element. It's a metal, element number 51, I believe, atomic number 51. It's a very soft metal. It's like formica, you know, kind of like it's really soft and it kind of is flaky. Yeah. Good to know, right? Yeah. Thank you. You and me. Yeah. All right. Anyways, antimony, colored stones, all sorts of precious stones and marble. David collects this thing. It says he's prepared it along the way. So what's interesting about this moment in the story is that David has prepared Israel's treasury to submit the first offering. The house of God submits the first offering. David had almost like, you could think of it as like this savings account that he was sitting on that Israel had stewarded for a long time. And he leverages that as the first bit of the offering towards the temple. And I just think it's really unique that we're kind of in the same spot, that the trustees have positioned us a certain way over the years. The tithers of this church, the people who have made offerings at this church for years, have generated this almost $1 million savings account where we are getting started on some of these projects, and they're already putting forward $400,000. Like, and I didn't want to blow past that last week, but that's an amazing thing, that we can spend that much money on the building, set aside that much money for the building, and we still have a savings account, praise the Lord, right? And so David mobilizes all this stuff, and he says, then, moreover, in addition to all that I have provided for the holy house, I have a treasure of my own, of gold and silver. And because of my devotion to the house of my God, I give it to the house of my God. And this is where we just see that David's balling on a different budget than you and me. 3,000 talents of gold, of the gold of Ophir, and 7,000 talents of refined silver, for overlaying the walls of the house, and for all the work to be done by craftsmen, gold for the things of gold, and silver for the things of silver. Who then will offer willingly, consecrating himself today to the Lord? Then the leaders of fathers' houses made their free will offerings. So David didn't implement a tax. David didn't give a dollar amount. He didn't put forth a figure. He just said, hey, whatever you feel compelled to give, you're going to give. There's a free will offering. You're going to make a decision in your heart with the Lord and go, this is what I'm going to offer. As did also the leaders of the tribes and the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, and the officers over the king's work. They gave for the service of the house of God 5,000 talents and 10,000 derricks of gold, 10,000 talents of silver, 18,000 talents of bronze, and 100,000 talents of iron. And whoever had precious stones gave them to the treasury of the house of the Lord in the care of Jehiel the Gershonite. Then the people rejoiced because they had given willingly, for with a whole heart they had offered freely to the Lord. David the king also rejoiced greatly. So Israel just knocks it out of the park. I mean, it's estimated this is somewhere between $300-400 million that's given for the building of the temple, which kind of gives me a segue into a few of the questions that came up from last week. Okay, Austin, you want to raise $1.1 million. You want to see the church give $1.1 million. What if we don't get it? Come on, I know somebody had that thought as they were leaving here last week. They're like, yeah, okay, what if we don't get it? Here's my answer. If we don't get it, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. What if we get over it? Again, praise the Lord. We've just already decided in our hearts that what we're doing here is we're trying to be faithful to put out these projects that we want to do to update the space. And then God is gonna unleash, or God is gonna release however much money he wants to. Because $1.5 million is like a $20 bill for the Lord. Right? And so God's going to do what he wants to do. Are we going to downsize our staff? Or are we going to kind of try and limit our operating expenses? Are we kind of trying to do other things so we can get these building projects done? No, we love our team. We are behind our team that we have here. Part of the reason why we have a budget that goes 56% to staff salaries is because we believe people build great ministries. Like pizza doesn't build great ministries, right? So we could blow out our ministry number so that Taylor could buy just endless amounts of pizza and Pop-Tarts for the youth ministry. But really, I want to support Taylor to build a ministry. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So we're behind people. We're not gonna hamstring ourselves just so we can get these projects done. The Lord's gonna do what the Lord's gonna do. Another question that's come up is Watson, what if I'm not ready? Maybe I'm not as liquid as some people just writing a check. Maybe I need to move some things, sell some things, do some different things. Maybe the Lord compels you to get rid of something that is just, it's too expensive, it's superfluous, and you don't need it, but you have it, and you want to get rid of it, and it's not going to be ready in time. I don't know what the circumstance is, but you're not going to be ready by next weekend. Well, then I would just say, participate in some way next weekend, because it's going to be something that we're all going to do in unity. And when we move together in that kind of unity, it's powerful, not just for the amount that comes in, but what happens in our hearts. And so we're going to give next weekend, but that option to give is going to be open for the rest of the year towards the building offering. And so if you want to give your end of the year gift at the end of the year, however you want to do it, that's going to be available for you as we go on throughout the year. The third question that's been asked, and this is more practical, it's not as inspirational, but will we miss any time in the building? There's a lot of construction that's going to be going on, and at this point, the answer is no. Actually, our contractors that we signed a contract with, because a lot of work is already moving forward in October, praise the Lord, because we have that $400,000, the trustees have already set a priority list, and we're going to start working through it as we can. But what we're going to do is we're going to start in this room, and what they said, they're all a bunch of church guys, which is just cool. They all go to this church in Longmont. They know all the volunteer jokes. It was awesome. And they're all planning on being in here in a service when it's all said and done, which I think is just great. It wasn't like an interview question we had for them, but they wanted to do it. And they said, worst case scenario, we lose access to the balcony for 1 week. So balcony, I can see you up there. I forget about you sometimes just because the lights are so bright. It's not because I don't love you, all right? Paul and Valbacus, I see you right there. We might lose access to the balcony for 1 week. Y'all have to come down here, sit with the rest of us for 1 week, but then hopefully it'll be back and going again next week. I can't even see you, but somebody's just shaking their head up there right now, just like no. So those are some of the questions, but back to 1 Chronicles, I want to point out a couple things. Is that first of all, the people of Israel were responding to what God had done. They weren't stirred up in some sort of emotionally manipulated moment here. They weren't under some sense of coercive or manipulative leadership that was just saying, hey, you better give this much or you're not going to be welcome anymore. No, they were responding to what God had done for them, and they just were submitting this out of worship, not out of pressure. The second thing that I noticed is that I'm not David. And maybe we can read this and we can get some leadership principles that you shouldn't ask people that are following you to do some things that you're not willing to participate in yourself. David definitely sets a good example for that. But more importantly, who David is in this story is Jesus. Stick with me for a second. The author of the book of Chronicles doesn't write about any of David's pitfalls in his life. He keeps it all up here. David was this, it's so awesome. And he kind of skips over the whole Bathsheba and all this other kind of crazy stuff that David had going on. And he tells the good parts of the story, because what the author of the book of Chronicles is trying to do is he's trying to cast our mind forward to the coming Messiah as we read it. And so here's what we know about Jesus, Jesus, just like David, put down the down payment for our salvation. So Jesus came and he didn't ask us to do anything that he wasn't willing to do himself. He laid his life down so that whoever wants to follow him would follow after his lead and go, Jesus, I'm laying myself down. I want to follow after you. Jesus put down his blood and his body as the down payment for our salvation, just like David put down the down payment for the temple to get built. And so what this is meant to cast your mind towards is the fact that God has so graciously, willingly, lovingly moved towards you, and he's trying to save you. It's not about how much you give. It's about how much he's given. It's about how much he's poured out for you so that you might respond to the generosity that's been demonstrated to you first. Does that make sense? And so that's my first point this morning of why we give. Why we give is we give because we have received. We give because we have received. There's two kinds of giving that really is talked about in the Bible. There's tithes and offerings. And a tithe, very simply put, would just be 10%. It's 10% of your income given back to, historically, where it's been given is to the local church that's feeding you, supporting you, and equipping you spiritually. And so listen, that's where I just say, if that's not this church, okay, that's okay with me. I don't need your money here. What I need is I want you plugged in and committed to a church where you can get behind the vision and say, okay, here we go, I'm investing here. Not because it's perfect, not because that pastor's perfect, because there isn't one, there isn't a perfect church, but you just get behind one and you go, okay, this is where I'm going to contribute. There's a lot of talk about whether the tithe is still needed today, whether it's still required today. It's interesting about the tithe. The tithe shows up in the Old Testament before the law is ever given. And then when we think of the tithe, I think we think of Old Testament law that's given. There's actually three kinds of tithe, all together adding up to maybe about like 20 to 23% of Israel's income. Three different kinds of tithe that Israel gives. And then Jesus, when he's on the scene, Jesus actually says, hey, you're tithing your mint and your cumin. And he's like you're tithing out of your herb garden, which he says, which is what you ought to do. But he says, while you're doing that, don't neglect the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy. So his rebuke against tithing is that people are tithing as this like sacrificial religious system, but they're not actually looking for an inward heart transformation while they're doing it. That's important for us to remember as we do this. Like God is not going to be more impressed if you give a big number. Like I think of the widow offering her 2 mites. And how Jesus goes out of his way to say, no, listen, her offering, because it was done with her heart, because she gave what she, all that she had, like that was significant. And so this is where I think we get maybe a little discouraged in the sermon because we start talking about tithes and we start talking about, okay, I know maybe that's something I should do, but man, Austin, if you knew my budget, like if you just saw what was going on every month, like you'd give me the out, like you would understand. And what I want to say is, that there are people who will help you in this church, who will sit down with you, and they will look at your budget with you, and they will help you go through and find areas because God is Jehovah Jireh. He is provider. And when we tithe, I'm not tithing to earn his salvation, but I'm tithing recognizing, know that God, you've given me everything. And so God, I'm going to trust you to move in the 90% of my income to do more with that than I could do with the full 100. And so listen, I have some older people in this church, if you want to sit with older people who have been through a lot of life. I have younger people in this church, if you just want to get some people that are in your peer group. I have some people who are boys, who are girls, who will sit down with you. They'll look at your budget, if you have a budget, and I can't promise they won't get out a red pen. And they won't go, cable, nope, that car payment, nope, got to figure it out. You know what I mean? But they are going to lovingly, graciously, with no judgment, help you. Because there are biblical principles, the way that you can approach your finances that I believe lead to blessing. Not in this crazy way where if you sow $5,000 in this building, I guarantee you'll get $10,000 back. That's not what I'm talking about. That's garbage time. What I'm talking about, though, is you having this perspective that, no, God has given me everything. And so I trust him to return back to him what is his, the 10%. But it's not just about tithing. It's also about giving offerings. Because what's interesting is the New Testament church was not marked by the spiritual practice of tithing. It wasn't like, oh, they were able to provide for the poor because of their tithe. No, but what the New Testament does show us is that the church, when it was first born, was marked by this radical generosity. So Acts 2:45 says, and they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. This wasn't some state-sponsored taxation system like communism. This was just an inward transformation of the spirit going man, listen, I don't love my stuff like that anymore. No, like I belong to Jesus. I love him. And if I see a need, I can help fill it. And so there's these offerings. There's these ways that people go, okay, I'm not holding on to my stuff so tight. I'm just going to give some of it away. So part of like Katie and I have always tithed, even since before we were married. We've been tithers. And even now, like I'm telling you that doesn't mean I don't drive a 1994 Jeep Grand Cherokee. It's sitting right out there in the parking lot if y'all want to see it after church. It's a spectacle. It still runs great, okay? Like it hasn't just meant that I'm driving some Lambo because I've been this tither, but what we've always tried to do is we've gone, okay, God, we're going to trust you and we're going to tithe. When the budget's been tight, we're going to tithe. When there's a lot, we're going to tithe. And we don't just tithe, but we look then for spaces to give offerings. This requires Christians to have some sense of financial margin in your life. So I'm not just asking you to live on 90% of your income. I'm actually asking if you would, under the Holy Spirit's conviction, look to lead a life even under that. So that every time Katie goes to Desperation Conference, the last couple times we've gone down there, I think we come back with a new compassion kit every time. I'm just like, it's going to happen, right? And here's what I know. Even one child, we sponsor one child. If we don't just give that money away, I have $30, $40 a month. You know what I'm going to spend it on? Me neither. Like, I don't know, Starbucks, Domino's. Like, I'm just going to spend it somewhere. It's going to go away somewhere. So like, why not just offer it somewhere that's going to be of better use? There's tithes and there's offerings, and we give them not because we can just paint this picture of like, okay, God, I think I can really earn your attention if I were to give you some money. That's not the way it works. If you're giving to get, you have it all backwards already. We give because we have received. We give in response to what we've been given already. The second reason why we give is we give because it keeps us content. So when I think of tithes and offerings, I know my tendency is to take resources and to kind of close my hands around them. You know what I mean? I go like, oh, I really would like whatever. But what tithing does is this consistent practice of opening my fingers. Every month I give my tithe. Every month we give our tithe and we just say, go. It's not even ours. Don't even touch it. And I'm just consistently keeping my hand open to what the Lord's called me to. But then offerings, what they are is they're just chances that we look for chances to be generous, chances to help people. And we go, okay, Lord, this might not even go to the church. This might just go somewhere completely different, but we're just going to give it away. We're just going to give it away. We feel called. We're going to give it away. And what I want to make sure is clear is that as you prepare and you pray over giving an offering, that you don't let your offering come at the cost of your tithe. This is important. They're different things. You tithe based on the income that you earn. You give offerings based on what you have. And it's important to note too, like God's not just after your tithes and offerings. He also wants you just to be generous with all the stuff that he's already given to you. Be generous with your car. Be generous with your home. Be generous with the places that God has placed you to work and to play. God's looking to cultivate this generosity in all of us because our tendency is to fall in love with the stuff that we've been giving. So we give because it helps keep us content. 1 Timothy chapter 6 says, but those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. So you just have to understand, this is the air that we're breathing as a culture filled with consumers. Is we go, man, it's all about get. It's all about more. It's all about keeping up with the Joneses. And there's just this hamster wheel that we're all on where we're just convinced if I just would earn a little bit more money, then I could just really buy the sense of happiness that I've been after. And Solomon has kind of proved that that's just vanity, is what he calls it. And he was bawling way more than you ever will. Anyways, but if you let this root, this love of money take hold in your heart, it leads to all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. Why? Because Jesus is ultra clear. You cannot have two masters. You will love one and hate the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And the word that he uses there for money isn't actually like dollars, it's mammon. This idea of stuff, things. If you are so in love with the material world around you, in getting and accumulating all that you can, your heart will fall in love with that stuff and you will neglect your actual Lord and Savior. You can only have one that you're going to serve, and your heart's going to gravitate towards the stuff. And so I want to give because it keeps my perspective on going, okay, God, no, you've provided everything for me. You have given me all the gifts and talents that I have to earn a living. You've given me every dollar that I have. I want to continually give back to you. This is where Paul says, I've found the secret of contentment. I love that phrase. In Philippians 4:12 and 13. He says, Philippians 4, 10, 11, then we'll read 12 and 13. I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Paul's like, hey, thanks, you're helping a brother out. Thanks, church at Philippi. You're like doing me a solid. He says, not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I've learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. What Paul's saying here is he's like, listen, I've done Totino's and ramen. Like, listen, and I know what that's like, and I know how to eat at Ruth's Chris. You know what I'm saying? Like, Paul has known what it's like to be beat up and to live and to eat just whatever they're feeding him in jail. But he's also rolled with Lydia. Lydia is this girl in the book of Acts that we learned. She's like this dealer in fine purple linens, which just means that Lydia was a baller. Like, and we don't have any document of Lydia being just like overtly generous with her tithe, but she was generous with her home. Like, churches would meet in her home. If Lydia was alive today, she'd be the girl who's like in the fashion district with a house in Manhattan. She'd have a house in LA and probably one over in Paris somewhere. Like, Lydia was doing well, and Paul would hang out with her, and he wouldn't get swindled. He wouldn't let his heart get caught up into the worldly things. But he would go, no, I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. How? I can do all things because it is Christ who strengthens me. So listen to me, like high school football players, like all you little young athletes with this Philippians 4:13 in your Instagram profile right now. Go get it. Like, just do it. Go get it. Work hard. Like, do your thing. But don't say when you score the touchdown, well, I can do that because Christ strengthens me. Because that is just wildly out of context. What Paul's talking about right here, and I'm not trying to knock it. Like, go work hard. Go score a touchdown. Do your little celebration dance. Do it all. It's awesome. I love it. But what he's talking about here is he's talking about I can have contentment because I know that it's Christ who gives me strength. So if you want to know the secret to contentment, if you want to kind of break this like endless supply of trying to accumulate more, of materialism and consumerism and this just like black hole that is a lot of American hearts of just stuff. If you want to break that, you have to understand and receive that it is Christ who strengthens you. Dave Ramsey, I mean, you can like him, you can not like his personality, I don't really care. One of the things he says that is really great is that personal finance is really, it's 20% head knowledge and 80% behavior. How many of y'all know that's true? Yeah. I can set my budget for 1 month, but then the Batos Tacos comes around and I'm like, all right, let's go. You know what I mean? What you need if you're going to order your finances in the way that God would have you order your finances is you don't necessarily need to read another book. You don't need to listen to another podcast. What you need is to receive this inward reality that Jesus has paid everything for you. And so the only appropriate response out of my heart is to respond generously towards him and his kingdom. Like we can sit here all day and talk about different practical ways to help you with your money, but ultimately what it's going to come down to is you receiving the gospel of Jesus Christ. That while you were still sin, Jesus died for you. He paid his life for you, and he gave you everything. Like, you can't even take one more breath today without it being a gift of his grace. And because he spent everything for you, the only response that we have is to go, okay, God, what do you want from me? God could just as easily go, hey, it's not about a tithe. It's I want 90, you keep 10. And that would be totally within his right. It all belongs to him. If you think back to the Garden of Eden, there was only one tree that could have been off limits. He could have made it, all the trees were off limits except for this one tree that'll provide for you and sustain you. He could have. He's God. It all belongs to him. And what he's asked us for is, he's not asked us for any specific amounts of our money, but what he's asked for is a heart that is in recognition of who he is as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, provider of everything, giver of everything. That's who he is, and that's what he's done. The last point for why we give is we give because we want to test God. You go, okay, whoa, I got too much reverence to test God. But Malachi 3:10 does say, bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need. God is really into ROIs, return on investment, like he is. And what God is looking for from us is to, in faith, sow into his kingdom. Well, maybe it's not even about the building project here for a sec. Maybe he's calling you to help the single mother that lives next to you. Maybe he's calling you to be generous with your car for one of your coworkers. I don't know what he's calling you to do. But the point is that if we'll put God to the test by being generous and opening up our stuff and sowing into the kingdom of God, is that he's going to bless it wildly. He's going to do far more abundantly than all that we could ask or think or imagine or dream. And what I want to see is I want to see us make this investment in this place, not really so that we can just enjoy it for ourselves, but for generations to be impacted after us. Because there's going to be a seed, that little quote, only God can count the apples in every seed. Have you thought about that yet? We put that quote up there intentionally. Like, if you thought about it, you don't know what one act of faith sowing a seed into the ground is going to yield in its lifetime, and what that fruit is then going to yield. But this is all actually really next week's sermon. So I just invite you to come back next week. Go ahead and stand. We're going to pray. As we pray, I want to pray this prayer of blessing that David prays over the assembly of Israel here in 1 Chronicles 29. If you just kind of want to close your eyes, it's not going to be up on the screen. If you just want to hear this and receive it, and if we kind of just line our hearts up with what's being said here. Blessed are you, O Lord, the God of Israel, our Father, forever and ever. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty. For all that is in the heavens and in the earth is yours. Yours, O God, is the kingdom, O Lord, and you are exalted as head above all. Both riches and honor come from you, and you rule over all. In your hands are power and might, and in your hand it is to make great and to give strength to all. And now we thank you, our God, and praise your glorious name. Jesus, I pray that as we maybe spend some time this week considering if this is something that you're stirring us up to do, I pray specifically against discouragement, that if we're kind of in this spot where we go, man, I just wish I could give more. God, help us by the power of your Holy Spirit to take some steps to get healthier in our finances right now, so that maybe next time the opportunity comes up to be generous, would you help us to be in a different situation to be generous? And God, if we're on the other end, where maybe we have plenty, God, would you just stir us up, not to give under compulsion or to do something just to impress somebody else or to really make sure that we're impressing you, God, but would we just give in faith responding to what you've done to us? God, I pray as there's going to be all sorts of just conversations happening this week, spouses talking, parents talking with kids, people just praying and talking to you. God, would you lead us with just absolute direct clarity this week? Would you just speak to us and maybe even help us take the inventory of the times that you've been generous and the ways that you've provided, the places that you've showed up? And would we not give next week in doubt or in fear, God, but would we give in faith next week? Would you stretch us, challenge us a little bit? And would you just do whatever it is that you want to do amongst us, God? You are Lord. You are good. It all belongs to you. We love you, Jesus. It's in your name we pray. Amen.